Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, and I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Show Me the Way is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing to Show Me the Way. I launched this podcast to spotlight real stories and perspectives we can learn from, and every guest has delivered. This week's episode is no exception. I had the privilege of interviewing Lauren Santagate. We first crossed paths at a former direct sales company where I watched her lead, train, and motivate on a daily basis. After speaking with her for this episode, even when she's pivoted with work, motherhood, moving, volunteering, she's always striving to be her best and to show her kids and others in her life you can go after what you want to make an impact. She reminds us never say never. You have no idea what's ahead and how the steps you can take make a difference for the future. Her incredible dedication and servant heart make her someone I'll always admire, and I'm thrilled to share her insights with you. Press play. You will definitely leave inspired. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. Okay, listeners, buckle up. I am beyond thrilled to have this week's guest on the show. Please join me in welcoming Lauren Santagate. She is a woman with amazing strength and resiliency and a positive, I can go after it mindset. She was a top leader in my former direct sales company, and she was the number one reason I decided to step out of my comfort zone and join the community. Every time I saw her or heard her speak, I was inspired, motivated, and ready to step up. She taught me and others so much about not giving up, throwing away our excuses, and just recognizing we can go after things we want. I love following what she's doing with all of her endeavors and how she's creating a joyful and full life for herself, her husband, and her 3 kids. I knew Lauren would be an awesome guest, and I'm so glad she accepted after I felt the nudge to invite her on. I know we'll all learn from her and that you will mirror my admiration after listening. So, welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast, Lauren.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was such kind words of you to say. Oh my, I don't think I've ever been introduced in a nicer way. Thank you. I'm really, really excited to be here.
Good. Well, yeah, I strongly believe that we should share what we think of others. We should tell them more often. So I love doing a little intro so you know exactly what I think and why I'm so honored to have you here. So thank you.
Well, I agree with that, and we've talked about this, but I've watched you sort of start this podcast and listened to quite a few of the episodes of it. Is the right word? Episodes? I don't even
Yeah,
know.
episode.
Recordings. And I just think it's awesome what you're doing. I love that you're giving people a voice. I love that you're sharing people's lives. I don't think we do that enough anymore. And it's important because people have stories and they make an impact, a lasting impact, and it's important to share those. So I love that you're doing this. It's huge. It's impactful.
Yes.
And I hope you know that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, I usually have my guests just say a few things about themselves. I know I said some things that I know, but would love for you to share with the listeners what's going on, where you're from, your family, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Where do I start? Well, you mentioned I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. I'm a wife to a husband, obviously, that is here downstairs. We have a dog that we don't really love that much, but he's still kicking. Um, but let's see. I grew up in New Hampshire, so I live in the Northeast. I live a little bit north of Boston, Massachusetts, right by the water. It's beautiful where we live. The sun is finally shining now, which is nice. I know you're somewhere cold as well, so we kind of suffer through 6 months of freezing, and then we finally get the sun to come out, and I feel like a whole new person in the last few days. So that's good. But I live up here in the Northeast in New England. I lived down in New Jersey for a little bit. Left New England for about 9 years, and then came back. So live in a small town, grew up in a small town, said I would never live in a small town when I turned into an adult, moved outside of New York City, lived there, loved it. And now I have returned to a town that is exactly the same size as the town I grew up in. So, there I go again, foot in mouth, because I said I'd never do it. And here I am. But I feel like I've lived a million lives in the past year, 2 years, but right now, just kind of carting my kids around. I feel like I just told my friend yesterday, I said, I'm in my momming so hard and wifing so hard era. I have spent the last 20 years focused on professional achievement and growth when it comes to businesses and careers. And I probably prioritized a lot of the wrong things, and we'll probably get into this more as I start talking. But I'm definitely in my momming era. My kids all play sports. They have tons of friends. They're always out, and I got to drive them everywhere because they're little, right? They're
Mhm.
they're still in elementary school. But I want to give them a really good life, and I just want to be really present. So I've been really like focusing on like cooking healthy meals and just trying to do as much with them as I can. My husband travels a lot for his job, so it's kind of like I'm the parent on duty a lot of the time. I'm doing both roles, and so that's been busy and it's always chaotic. But I do think we kind of thrive in the chaos a little bit. Actually, I know I do. Oh, and then additionally, it's like we're real estate investors, so I manage our properties. We have Airbnb properties. We've got some land development deals we are working on, and I don't know. I'm like the person you see those memes where it's like the wife kind of like swings into the room and they have this new idea for their husband every night.
Oh,
That's me.
yeah.
I'm like, we should do this. What about this? We just got back from a trip to New York and Washington D.C. and we went to this amazing place in Washington D.C. and I was like, we should make this at home. And my husband is just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, so right now just be a mom and wife and just honestly trying to put my phone down and just be more present for pretty much friends, family, everybody. I think I've had this realization in the past maybe like year, 2 years, that time is really precious and it goes away, and I just want to do better at 10 out of 10 relationships with people I care about. So it's really been a big focus of mine. But yeah, still just doing a million things. My brain is coming up with new ideas every day, and then I write them down, and then most of them just stay in the notes section of my phone. But we're doing a ton of stuff. And then one of the biggest things, a friend of mine, my friend Courtney, she's one of my best friends. Her and I started a Women's Wealth Society, which is essentially a community for women to learn about financial literacy and just what to do with the money they make. And there's just such a gap there. And her and I have talked about this for years and kind of kicked the can down the street. And about 5 months ago, we finally pulled the band-aid off and said, you know what? We're going to do this. We're just going to do it. We're going to start it. We're going to create an LLC. We're going to come up with a business plan and kind of soft launch it. And then some stuff happened, in her life. It's a little bit crazy. But all that being said, we have the community and we're just, really starting to add value as much as we can. It's something we love to talk about. And I know people are always like, oh, money isn't everything. And it's like, no, money is not everything. But education and awareness around your finances is huge. And there's a huge gap there when it comes to women and what they know and what historically has been taught to them. And we want to empower people, to feel better equipped to make decisions in their lives. And that's something that's been taking up a ton of my time, but it's like a passion project for her and I. And it just feels so good to be doing something like that, that I hope makes a difference, that we know is going to make a difference big time one day. Yeah, so that's what I'm up to, kind of all over the place. Getting ready for summer, all the good stuff. See what I mean about the chaos?
Yes.
Like my mom always says to me, she's like, I don't know how you guys handle and do so many things. And I'm like, I don't know what to do if we're not doing so many things. It's kind of
Right.
like I'm better at managing it all when it's all happening at the same time.
Yeah, and you don't want the grass to grow under your feet. I love that.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
I mean, probably another reason, like I said, I admire you and I just am grateful that I got to know you because I'm very similar. Like I'm like, "Hey, here's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna be a podcaster." Like I always have ideas for my husband too. And I think he just just laughs and says, whatever, like you do you. And as
Yep,
long as we still figure everything else out, go for it. So it's been fun. I like trying new things. So I can
exactly,
appreciate that.
exactly.
I also love you saying that, you're in the momming days and you're momming because I look back, like, it goes so fast. I know it's very cliche, but, like, my older son just finished his first year at college, and it's like, I miss what you're talking about so much, but now that you're in it, you're like, "Oh, I'm driving, I'm going here and there and everywhere," and it's like, I wanna go back to that so bad. So, I
Yeah,
love that you're trying to take advantage of spending time together, putting your phone down. I respect that so
yeah.
much, and
It's
I
hard though, right? It's hard. Like
it's really hard.
being a mom is the best thing in the whole entire world. And when I had my first, so I have two girls and a boy. When I had my oldest child, my oldest daughter, I remember saying out loud to pretty much anyone who would listen, like, I will never be a stay at home mom. I do not want to be. And at the time, I had a career and it was thriving. And, that was my path. Right. And I wanted to be a mom, but I did not want to be at home because I think we've put this idea on a pedestal of like the perfect balance, right? Like you can have a career and be a mom and do this and do that. And it's like, you can, but it's really hard. Like, I don't believe in balance. I think some days you're going to be focused on one thing and some days you're going
Mhm.
to be focused on something else. But that idea of like you can do it all. Like you can, but it's really overwhelming,
Right.
you don't actually get to enjoy the moments. You're always focused on like, what ball am I not dropping, And so it's hard. It's so hard to be a mom, but I'm realizing, and I think COVID made me realize this, right? Like it kind of fast tracked my kids because my kids were 2, 4, and 6 when COVID started. And so I had a son going into kindergarten and a daughter who was 2. She was still in diapers. And all of a sudden now they're so much older. And I'm like, what happened? What happened to those little kids? Like, where did they go? And it was because time just flew by because it was so much uneasiness and we didn't know what was going to happen. And I didn't take advantage of all that time I had at home with them being stuck here, which was like hell on earth. But like you didn't take advantage of it because you just wanted to get out of it.
Hmm.
And I'm definitely realizing now that I have to stop looking forward so much for the next thing and really just enjoy it, even if they make me crazy,
And
because
they will.
it goes fast. Yeah, I mean they do every single day, but
Right.
it goes so fast, and I can't. I have a sixth grader. She's going to middle school next year, and I'm like, you were just born. Like, what do you mean? Like, you
I
can't go to middle
know.
school. It takes a lot of effort and intention for me, to not pick up my phone and to actually sit there with them and have conversations about my son wants to talk about Pokemon and boy things, right? But
Right.
like that's just those conversations are so important. And it's taken me, for someone who's so used to like multitasking and doing a million things, it's hard for me to sit down and really be intentional, but I'm learning and I'm trying to get better every day, which is what we always tell our kids. Get a little bit better every day,
Every
whether
day.
it's sports, whether it's school, whatever. It's that, 0.1% that matters. And so I'm kind of gifting that back to myself and saying, just slow down. It's okay. You don't have to be hustling through life. You can slow down too. So
Yeah, that's great, and that's a lesson too, so that's wonderful, and I did hear you say never a couple of times, and that's one thing I say on the show, never say never,
I
because you
know.
truly do not know what tomorrow brings, which really brings us it's a good segue into why we're doing this podcast. The Show Me the Way podcast is really, as you know, about maybe times that you've dealt with adversity or a challenge or something had to change and what that looked like and what your perspective became after it. I started because I wanted to share the story of my younger son that has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which, by the way, he's going to be 16 this year, which blows my mind. So I'm with you on that. He's going to be a junior in high school. That's
Holy
insane.
crap.
But anyway, I started because I want to share his story and I want to share all of the education he's given my husband, me, my other son, and everybody that meets him. That, life isn't always going to look like you think it's going to look. I thought I was going to have two little soccer players, and I thought my older son and him were just going to be typical boys that wrestled and did all of the things. And when we got that diagnosis, like just on a dime. Our entire life changed. And it was like, wait, I'm not going to do corporate anymore. I got to find something else. I got to be creative. I got to have all these new ideas and things that I'm going to do so that I can be available for him. And sharing that story, well, then people start sharing similar stories. Oh, well, I remember when this happened. And sometimes it's a medical diagnosis, but sometimes it's just other opportunities or things that came up that caused them to pivot. And before we popped on here, I was telling Lauren that we are not old, but we have experienced a lot of things. She and I we're close in age. So I'm sure that Lauren has a couple of different things that she could say. I could even talk about a couple of the pivots that I know that she's taken, but really, I don't have a script. I just kind of have casual conversation and create a platform where people can just say, here's what I did, and here's how I pivoted, and here's what I've learned. And here's maybe what I would tell my younger self or tell somebody else if they were going through something similar. So, with that, I will let Lauren have the mic again and really just kind of share with us a time in your life where life looked like something and it changed and what you did with it.
Yeah, well, I will go back to my comment of, where you say never, and me saying I will never be a stay-at-home mom. And, here I am, 43 years old, 3 kids. I'm at home. I've been at home now for 9 years with them. I'm very grateful for it, obviously. I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity, but I will tell you this. I am a very self-aware control freak and very type A, and it's something I'm working on when it comes to letting go of control. And I've been aware of it since I was a kid because my mom was the same way. And so when things don't go to plan, it really shakes me. It really messes me up, especially when I think I've done so much work in my controlling ways to make sure what I want to have happen is going to happen. And so, I got out of college and I was like, I want to get a great job. I want to be a career woman, right? Like I loved sports. I loved marketing. I actually thought I was going to go into sports marketing and journalism and broadcasting. That was my dream. I never really pursued it. I still watch baseball games now and watch Erin Andrews on football and think that could be me, but
That
it's
could have
not.
been you.
Instead, I'm watching on TV and she's, a millionaire and I'm not. But so I went to college and I got a great job out of college. And maybe when you're a girl, I don't know if it's, male versus female, but I do think there's a lot of maybe added pressure on women, or at least, 20 some odd years ago, there was probably more because your parents wanted you to go into corporate. They wanted you to get, have a good, secure career. They paid for college, or at least part of it, in my case. And I was driven very much by validation from other people. And so ended up in a career in the liquor industry, actually, premium alcohol, which, was wonderful when you're 22 years old coming out of college. And I didn't really know where it was going to go, but I ultimately fell into marketing and promotions and programming for some massive brands like Tito's when they first launched, and Moet Hennessy and their umbrella of brands. And I mean, if you've ever had an alcoholic drink, I've probably touched one of the ingredients in it, as far as their marketing goes. And I loved it. And I traveled and this is all before kids, obviously, my husband traveled and I traveled and we like had this great life. And I was like, this is wonderful. I'm making great money. I'm climbing that corporate ladder. My clients loved me. I just loved what I did. It was different every day. And I always knew I wanted to have kids. But again, like you read the books, or at that time it was like blogs, or you just hear stories because the internet really wasn't this huge social media thing yet. And it was like, well, sure, you can do that and, have babies. But everyone I saw that I worked with at the time who was having children, like they were coming right back to work after they had their babies. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do the same thing. Right. And I did. My daughter was born. I went back to work 3 months later. And then about 6 months later, we decided we were going to move. So we had been in New Jersey. I had lived or worked in New York City for years, but we were far from family. My parents are up north. My husband's parents are up north. So we had no network of help really. It was like us raising a baby and we had no idea what we were doing. The hospital like let us take this baby home. Like, do they know that we don't know what the hell we're doing? And so you all of a sudden we're going to move. And I remember how nervous I was. I worked from home at the time, kind of, but was going in and out of the office. I remember how nervous I was asking my bosses, we're moving back to Boston. Can I keep my job? And they immediately were like, yes, right? No big deal. You're already kind of remote. No big deal. And then I'll never forget this. I was in the closet. We had this tiny little closet in our house, and I was packing up our clothes because we were going to be living with a neighbor and then moving back to Boston. And I got a phone call from the co-owners of the company. There was two owners, a woman and a man, that I worked for. And they were like, actually, we've changed. This is 2 days before we were moving back to Boston. And they were like, actually, we don't feel comfortable with you being that far from the office. So they basically took back what they had told me about continuing my career. And I remember being like, wait, what? It was the biggest shock because I was in my closet. I had an 8-month-old baby next to me and trying to pack up a house to move. And I was like, but my career has defined me for 10 years, or maybe 9 years at that point. What do you mean? What am I going to do? And so it wasn't just moving, 6 hours north and packing up your life. It was, well, now I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And so we moved up here and they actually let me stay on for a few months kind of as a consultant, but I knew that was going to end and they were really kind of mean. It was weird. It was a really weird dynamic that happened after we moved, but I ended up at home. I ended up at home with a baby in a new town where I knew nobody, small town where there's really nothing to do. And I was so isolated. And I went from like having this big city job to client meetings all day long to this career I love that I got to brag about because it was great and I did really well. And then I was just a mom. And you hear people say like you're just a mom, and I don't say it now, but then I was like, I'm just a mom. What did I do all that work for? What did I go to college for? What did I work so hard for? I'm going to have to go find a new job. They're not going to be as flexible, but I also have an 8-month-old. What's this going to even look like? And so my husband was like, we will make it work. You don't need to go out and figure out something right now. But it was weird. On one hand, you want to be at home with your kid. But on the other hand, I wanted to go find a job because I didn't have anything else to talk about with my friends. None of my friends had kids at the time. They were all in corporate America too. And I really slowly watched my relationships with them. It was mostly my college girlfriends change because when we had been emailing every day about, complaining about bosses or things that happened at work, now I wasn't on email for 10 hours a day and I didn't have those same complaints and those same stressors. And my relationships really kind of fractured with a lot of them during that time because we didn't have anything in common anymore. It was really bizarre. So it was really isolating. My husband was traveling a ton, which he still is. And then about 6 months later, I got pregnant with my son, which again was planned, right? We were like, we're going to have kids 2 years apart. And we did. But I can't go get a job now because I'm pregnant. And I'm not going to be like, hey, I'm pregnant. Can you hire me? And then I'm going to leave again. So I basically kind of resigned myself to just being a stay at home mom, which is the hardest job in the whole entire world. But at the time, it was a really big hit for me. And it kind of felt like I was throwing everything that I had worked so hard for away. And it took me years to get out of that space because I don't know. I think being a mom is the most amazing thing, but I also think 10 years ago when I was going through this, there was a lot of pressure to perform professionally or to have an accolade or a title. Especially, I went to a business school. So everyone in my sphere that I had worked with or kind of been around, they were climbing that corporate ladder. And so there wasn't anybody that was just a mom, and if you were just a mom, it was like the girls I went to high school with who never left our hometown, and that really wasn't the most glorious thing. And so that was tough. It was really hard. Anyway, long story short, because I could talk forever, and it feels a little bit depressing to think about now because
No,
I
I think
wasn't
this is
grateful
good.
for it. At the time, I didn't really understand how lucky I was to have a spouse who said, you know what, we'll figure it out. Like, we're going to have to penny pinch. Like, we didn't have any money. I remember wanting to go get a manicure, and I was like, we can't get a manicure. Like, we were putting things on credit cards, and with baby number two coming in. And that's when I found direct sale. I remember a friend of mine from New Jersey was involved in direct sales, and I had kind of watched people succeed, but I also judged them hard. I was like, ew, like what failures, what losers, like their moms trying to make money doing this stuff. And I mean, I thought some really mean things, but I remember also there was just this one day, it was right before my son was born, and I don't know, seeing some posts on Facebook. And I remember knowing the person, kind of, I had met her a few times, and her just talking about how she had paid their mortgage with her paycheck. And I was like, what? Like, I thought you were only making a couple $100s. Like, you're paying a New York City mortgage with your paycheck. Like, what is this about? So, that's kind of when direct sales entered. And I will say it took me years to get over that stigma of what people thought. And it wasn't really until I started making money that actually I felt like mattered, where I could pay our mortgage, or I could pay our car payments, or I could pay for my daughter's gymnastics classes. It it didn't feel like it was making much of an impact until it was. And it took me years to get out of that spot where I felt like I should have a career that mattered, but instead I was just a stay-at-home mom. So it was weird. And now I look and I feel like it's all coming back around, now, and maybe social media helps with this. As much as I love social media, I also hate it. But I do think it helps normalize that there are a ton of moms who are at home and they don't have jobs, and they are okay with it. Like, they are okay with their husbands being the breadwinners for this season in their life. And I'm like, yes, hell yes, because you feel like you have to do all these things. But really, like, raising kids is not easy. And if you have
Not
somebody
at
else
all.
do it, it costs a lot of money. If you have your kids in daycare, it costs a lot of money. So my point was, how did I get through it? I just found something else that filled my cup in a different way. And I think that's important for myself, being the planner. And maybe you're the same way. Like, my husband makes fun of me because I'm like, okay, we've got a game at 7, so we're gonna have dinner at 5:30. So I got to start prepping dinner at 4:45. So I got to have, and he's like, what? And I'm like, oh, I have this planned out. Like, I got to go backwards through everything. For someone that's a planner and that control freak, I was like, okay, I'm at home. I'm going to get through this. We're going to figure it out. Like, there's never been an option for it not to work out for us, but I was always like, I got to make it work somehow. And I just realized that the two biggest things I was lacking when I was that stay-at-home mom was any sort of connection. I didn't have relationships because I didn't know anybody here. And I wanted to make some money. And so I was like, how can I do that? Okay, I can leverage social media. I can meet people that I've never met before in person online. They're kind of similar. They're looking, for similar things I am, and I can make money sharing, some products. Great. And that was the start of it. And that was 2015. So yeah, 10 years ago, which is crazy. And obviously that decision to even try, I mean, I tried for 6 months and got nowhere. And then I was like, maybe I should try a little harder, and started to make a little bit of money, and then started to make a little bit more. That decision was the catalyst to crazy things that happened, 6 years down the line from there, where direct sales basically turned our lives upside down in the best way possible, in ways I could never imagine, and allowed me to make, a significant amount of money that now allows me, because of what we made then, to be at home with my kids, but not be penny pinching and not be worried about getting a manicure. And so it's funny how like the one little decision you can make at some point to maybe just get out of your own way can really impact a lot of things down the line, you know? And I'm a much more confident person because of direct sales, but I still struggle sometimes when I look around at my mom friends here in town. They all have full-time jobs. And I think, do they think less of me for being just a stay-at-home mom? And then I remind myself, I gave myself this chance now. Like I would have had to go back to work if I didn't do something. So my way out was kind of through it. It was like, figure out a way to make it work, you know?
Well, and that's why I said at the beginning that I admire you because now I'm not a social media stalker or anything, but I love seeing all of the adventures you do with your kids and all of the things you're doing. And I've thought about that so many times. I'm like, she worked really hard. And I know at the beginning you said maybe I prioritized things incorrectly, but at the time it was the right thing to do. So I
Yep.
don't think you can say that, oh, I shouldn't have done that because watching you and even listening to you at the beginning when we were working together, you would say, I'm putting my head down right now. Like I'm reaching my goals. I'm going to do this. And when I watch you now, I'm like, because of some of the things she's done in the past, she's able to have the life that she has now. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think we personally, especially women, we put pressure on ourselves and we probably always will. Like, I mean, I'm a caregiver. I take care of my son. I'm available for him. And I'm still like, what's my purpose? What am I
Right,
doing?
right.
And it's like, what, maybe that's your purpose. So, like, take a breath and take care of your child because he needs you right now. So,
Yeah.
and the same thing with my husband. He's like, "We'll figure it out. Like, this is what we need you to do right now." He doesn't come down the stairs. He works at home. He doesn't come down the stairs and every day after work and say, "What did you do all day?" Like, he doesn't judge. He
Right.
he, he doesn't question. I'm the one that
Yep.
questions.
Same
And
thing. It's like the
we always
self-inflicted
do that.
judgment. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So I think you probably will always say, "Oh, just a mom, just a stay-at-home mom." But
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear you say that you've built this confidence and you feel good about what you've been able to do with your life. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I keep having this for a couple years now. One of my other really good friends and we talk back and forth. And one of us said this comment one day, like, why can't this be enough? Like, why do we always feel like the goalpost is always moving, right? Whether it's what you're earning, whether it's what you're doing at home, whether it's what your kid, like we're constantly, and I think social media has a ton to do with this because we're comparing ourselves to other people we don't even know their situations, but you're constantly moving the goalposts. Like we get to a goal and we don't even take a minute to celebrate. We're like, okay, what's next? And so every time I do that now, when I'm like, okay, what's next? No, my purpose right now is to make sure my home has healthy food in it, that my kids will get energy for their sports they play when they come home. My purpose is not to keep my house clean, but I like when my house is clean. My husband could probably care less, but I like to have a clean home. I like to take care of our properties myself. Like, yes, we outsource a lot of it, but I like to go there and spend time there because I want to give our guests a really good experience. I have to remind myself that I am doing more in a day than most people probably do in a week. And I don't have to move the goalposts. But like you said, in the beginning, so obviously we were at a company together in direct sales, and in the beginning it took off for me. Was there some luck? I don't want to say there was luck, but I do think that a lot of things happened simultaneously that made my success an option or an opportunity for me because I had been at some other companies. I had networked a ton. I had listened and read a ton of books and done so much development behind the scenes personally that no one really knew I was doing. That when the time came, it felt like the gates opened and I was like, I can do this and I can do that. And all this stuff just happened at the right time. And I was in the right place and had made a decision to leave one company and go to another one, even though my mentors told me it was the worst move I could. They were like, this is the worst decision you've ever made. And I was like, we'll see. And I remember she said to me, when you get your first 5-figure check, feel free to come out and visit me and give me a call and I'll fly you out here to California. That was what she said to me. And I had never made a 5-figure check ever in direct sales, actually, probably ever anywhere. And I made a 5-figure check in like month 3. And I remember I texted her and I was like, I remember exactly what you said to me. Are you flying me out? And I was like, actually, I don't even want to come out there, but I just wanted to let you know. And that felt really good. But so I was head down. We started this company and COVID happens. And so I've got 3 kids at home. I got a husband who's usually not at home. Now he's at home and he's like there. And you don't know what's going on. And I think I probably worked 12 to 14 hours a day for that first year. I mean, I was on Zoom calls every single day. I think I was doing 13 to 14 a week nobody else wanted to do them. So I was like, I'll do them. And that was a season though, because I fully believe that if you don't, like, you think about that plane on the runway, if you don't get moving fast enough, you're never going to get up in the air. And so I was head down. Did my kids live off of TV for that first year? Yeah. They weren't in school. It was COVID. What, they were outside as much as they could be, but like I kind of didn't parent great. I mean, I fed them and I bathed them, but like I wasn't super present. But I also, like you said, because of how hard I worked in that season and what I prioritized, I now am able to prioritize them and showing them the world and taking them on adventures. And when they say, "Can I do this?" We always kind of worry, are we spoiling our kids? And I'm like, I don't want to spoil our kids. I don't want to say yes to everything. But if it's something I think they can learn from, I think it's great to have the option to say yes. I never want to say no because of a lack of money. And that's really been something my husband and I have always agreed on. We both grew up in similar circumstances where our parents did say no because of a lack of money. And so it was important to us to build a life that we had some security there financially to be able to do the things we want to do and say yes. And as our kids get older, I want to take, my daughter's like, can I go to Paris? And I was like, what? Can you go to Paris? And I'm like, you know what? I probably could take you to Paris because how cool would that be to go on a trip with just you when you turn 13 next year? So will we do it? Who knows? But it's amazing to know that I put myself in this place. We put ourselves in this place on purpose to be able to have those options available to us now. I fully believe in like those seasons, and
Mhm.
I now have completely, I think, seasoned myself out of direct sale. I don't want to hustle anymore. There's so many things I love about it, but I also, for me, if it's not 100% yes, it's a
Right.
no.
And it's just not the season right now.
Yeah.
You're in a different season, you have different priorities, and I love that. I think it's
Yeah.
really, like you said, self-aware. Self-aware that you're a control freak, but self-aware that what is important to you right now. And I really loved what you said about giving them adventures. I have a good friend. She has 3 boys, and she'll ask them, "Okay, this year it's your turn to pick the family vacation." And a couple of summers ago, the middle child was like, "Let's go to Alaska." Like, that was his idea. I was, "What? Alaska?" And they went. And I don't think they are spoiled or they think that they can have anything they want, but they just understand that if they can do it, they're gonna figure it out and they're gonna have this great family experience together, and it's been very important to them. So, I
I
admire
love
that
that.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, for us, when I was growing up, it was very much like get good grades. So get good grades, be in the honor society in high school, play the sports so you can go to college, so you can get a good job. It was very much like my path was already sort of dictated. But I didn't have, my dad does own his own business, but it's a small business. It's just him and one other person. And so he's essentially, an employee for himself. And there wasn't really anybody around me that I knew that had any sort of entrepreneurial insight. Now I feel like I really want to show my kids that like they don't have to go to school and get good grades and go to college to get a good job. Like there are a million other options. And if that's what they do, great. But I don't want them to feel pigeonholed. And so I want them to be resourceful and resilient when it comes to, things that happen at the last minute that aren't what they expected. Or I just said to my daughter last night because was talking about something she was disappointed that didn't happen. And I was like, disappointment is the difference between expectation and reality. I was like, listen, do you think this is going to matter in 5 years? And she was like, what do you mean? I said, do you think you're going to remember this in 5 years? And she was like, probably not. And I was like, then don't worry about it for more than 5 minutes. All these things that happen in our life that we think are so huge in the moment, right? They create so much stress and anxiety, whether it's like breaking up with a bad boyfriend or moving and packing up a house or changing careers or losing your job. All these things that happen, there are very few things in life that are actually going to matter 5 years from now when you think about it. And like when you think back, even just last weekend, we were supposed to go to a concert on Sunday night that I got my husband tickets for Christmas. My parents were supposed to watch my kids. My mom broke her wrist, so she couldn't come. Then my cousin's like, I'll come. And then my cousin said, I'm not going to be able to come. And so I had this huge expectation of we're going to go to the casino, go to the concert. It's going to be fun. We're going with our friends. And guess where we were Sunday night? We were at home with our kids because we didn't have any childcare. And I had to remind myself, this is not going to matter in 5 years. We won't even remember that we had these concert tickets to begin with because it's not that important. So I really want to teach my kids like, yeah, adventure, yes, travel, yes, see the world. But I also want them to experience like all different parts of life and know that like disappointment is a part of life, unfortunately. And there are people who are in all parts of the world who are living all sorts of lives. And I want them to see that. I feel like it's my job, maybe it's my purpose right now, is to teach our kids that the little things they do can make such a big impact. And the things that they don't even realize the little things they do, how important they are to other people. And I want them to be aware of that, because I just think right now we have a generation of people who are growing up with phones in their hands, on social media, with no idea on how to connect, how to have relationships, how to build community, build value. And it's really sad to me. So I really want my kids to realize, like, there's so much out there you can do, but there's almost always so many people you can help. And I just want to teach them that. Like, that is my purpose right now. I feel like if I can coach their teams and help other kids get better at sports, but again, it's all because of the way I prioritized 5 years ago.
I love the lessons because I was going to say that too. You're teaching your children things all the time, and what a great lesson to understand how to cope with a disappointment. So I think that's really important. I hope you keep doing that. You're inspiring me. I try to do it with my older son because yeah, he's right in it. He's like, "Okay, I got good enough grades in high school and I play a sport and I got into college and he gets to play soccer at college and to me that's just icing on the cake, but he's getting a degree and I think to myself, I don't know if you're going to continue. I don't know if you're going to finish. I don't know if you're going to transfer. Like the world's open. You don't have to do everything that your dad and I did. You can be
Right.
creative. Now, sometimes my husband's like, slow down, Andrea, you have too many crazy ideas because uh, my older son wants to go into finance. And I said, you should go into wealth management and you should eventually be a financial consultant and help people and have all these clients. And then when you're 50, you'll have this amazing client base and you'll just be rolling in the money. And my husband's like, time out. You know,
I
that's
mean,
a
hey,
lot
it
of
sounds good to
work.
me.
I know. I'm like, that would be great. But, I want obviously he should do what's best for him, not what I think is going to be best. So yeah, it's very important. And getting back to what you were saying about working hard in that job and with that direct sales company, again, lessons. Like I think you were sharing your experience like to all these stay-at-home moms. You're not just a mom. You can do this and you can be successful. And I think that was what was like I said, you're the reason I joined that company. I listened to you. Yeah. You were on calls all the time. I listened to you speak and I was like, wow, like not that I had the same success that you had, but you just opened my eyes. Like you
Yeah.
can do these things. It's not impossible to be successful by sharing things you love and by bringing that opportunity to other people that are going through what you're going through.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing I remember, when I started there at that company, I said, I want to make as much money as I can. Like, money to me is always, it's a currency, right? Like, it's not everything, but it does make life a lot easier. And I just think life is too short to have to say no to things you want to do because you don't have money. I fully believe that 100%. Like, I want to be able to do certain things. And I knew that we had to make money. And so this opportunity arose and I took advantage of it. But I also learned a lot of things about myself through that. And it was that I was still depending on other people's validation to tell me, like, you're amazing, good job, congratulations on that promotion. And it felt so good. I needed that. I thought I needed it at least. And I've slowly come to realize now over the past few years that, like, I was that way my whole entire life. I was seeking the recognition, the appreciation to fill a void because I didn't have, like, I appear to be confident. I think I'm much more confident now, but 5, 6 years ago, on the outside I was confident, but on the inside I was still lacking a ton of self-confidence because I was just a stay-at-home mom. And I think, when you're around a lot of women who are in similar situations and getting to make some sort of impact with them, at least I hope I did, it reminded me that, like, I'm here telling them that they can do all these things and they're amazing for what they're doing at home with their kids. And I'm not even giving myself the appreciation for doing those things. And so that's the biggest, I think, lesson out of all of it is there's going to be seasons, but there's always a lesson to come out of it. And for me, I don't really care what other people think anymore. Like,
That's really good.
I really haven't cared what people thought in general about a lot of things. But when it came to me, I don't really care if people in the past, I didn't really care if people liked me, but I wanted them to respect me. And now I want them to respect me and like me. I don't want to be I don't want to be respected because of a title I have or an amount of money I've made. I want to be respected because people look at me and say, like, wow, she's a great mom. She's always, on the side of the soccer field, or she's always at the basketball games, or she's always carpooling a million kids here and there. That's what I spend my time doing now. Right now, I'm planning a sixth grade dance. I have a huge box of decorations on the ground next to me I have to deliver. And my daughter's like, well, why are you doing it? And I'm like, because I have time to do it. And not everyone has time to do it. And I am so happy that I get to do this for your class. Like, how awesome is that? But it's because I worked to get to a place where now I have that opportunity and those options.
Hey, you're making me think a lot about I really should I should get some kind of affiliate plug for always talking about Mel Robbins and the let them theory. But a
Yeah.
lot of what you're saying is like that. Like, yes, we want to be in control of everything, but we really can only control how we react to things. And it's
Mhm.
important to not worry about what other people are judging or what they're saying about the things that you're doing. But what you just said reminded me of a really important thing that has stuck with me. Like, do things that you're personally proud of. So
Yeah.
I always think about that. When I'm older, I want to say I was a really good mom and my kids loved me and we have a good relationship and I was there as much as I wanted to be and I can be proud of that instead of, well, I tried to do a podcast or I tried to sell some
Right.
products. Like, I would much rather people remember me as a good mom. That's important. So I
Yeah,
love
but the
that.
fact that but I think it's also important, I love Ed Milet. I listen to Ed Milet podcasts pretty much weekly, if not more than once a week. And then I force my husband whenever we're in the car, I'm like, we're going to listen to this again. This is a really good podcast episode. But I forget the terms he uses, and I've heard it somewhere else too. But he talks about when you die, people are there's the professional like accolades, but no one's ever going to be like, wow, they were a really great CEO. Like they're going to be like, wow, they were a great friend, they were a great mom, they were a great sister, they were a great aunt. But in this like fast-paced chaotic world, we forget that that's the most important stuff that actually is longest lasting. And that's why I think like I have shifted so much. And obviously I'm well aware that because of the way I made some priorities happen, because of the financial gains we had during the time with the company, I'm very fortunate that we had educated ourselves enough to do things with our money that were very smart, to invest our money in things that cash flowed more money. We did some very smart things with our money. We didn't really spend very much of it. And I know like YOLO, right? Like I did buy myself a nice bag. It was the only nice bag I've ever had. I want to have this because I don't know what this is going to look like or how long it's going to last. And so I sort of shifted from always trying to figure out what was going to be next to being like, why don't I just secure myself now for the future versus pushing, 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 because this might go away. And of course, it did go away. Oh, and that was talk about a shocker on like a Tuesday afternoon, but it did go away. And I saw other people who were in a similar position to me be like, what am I going to do now?
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, well, that sucks. Definitely sucks. But we're okay. We're
Mhm.
better than okay. Now I think where, I talked about the community that my friend and I are building, it's not about making money for me. Now it's about making impact. It's totally changed. My 20s and 30s were like, how do you make as much money as possible? How do you gain steam in the career? How do you, get the recognition, get the clients, land the deals? I just want to be remembered as a good person. And I want to be remembered as somebody who did more than she had to do to make some sort of impact. Like right now we have a very small town. There's hardly any businesses here. Property taxes are high. Everyone's fire, police, schools always asking for more money, and people's taxes just keep going up because we don't have commercial tax coming in because we don't have a lot of businesses. And I'm like, what can we do? So I've been spending my last few nights basically after attending the town meeting researching different creative ways to bring in more taxes for the town so that we can have more. What can I do to give back to the town at the same time? What does the town need? What do the families need? What do they spend their money on? I've been deep diving into what other small towns are doing across the country. What is the solution? And if I can come up with something that even solves half of it, a quarter of it, I would love to do that. How about we start thinking about how we can do something that gives back and also raises money? I want to solve this problem. How good will it feel 20 years from now to know that I solved a problem for the town that my kids grew up in, Because I have a business background, because
Mhm.
I know a lot of people that I have a lot of connections, and because I have the time to do it. I don't have to, I get to. And that's like a huge perspective change, right? I have to do these things. I have to go to the gym. I have to cook dinner. I have to unload the dishwasher. No, I get to have my house clean for my kids so that when they come home, they are calm. I get to whatever it is. But that's like what I love now. It's all I want to do. I just want to
That's
solve
amazing.
problems. Help women understand their finances. Let's solve that problem. Help our town. Let's solve that problem. But I love that I get to be in a place now where I get to instead of I have to. It's huge.
I love the way that your brain works. That is so that is really awesome that you're doing that. I just gosh, I think you're teaching your children and people around you all the time without even knowing it. And I do think you and I could talk forever because I have so many other questions, but I do want to get back to what you said at the very beginning about your friend Courtney. We had Courtney Nine on this podcast. And if listeners did not listen to that episode, go back and find it with Courtney Nine because gosh, we could have her on again because since I've had her on, she's certainly been through a lot.
I know, she's lived a whole other life since
She
then.
really has, but she's another amazing leader that I learned so much from. And something that she said, which I know is not her phrase because there's a book called it, but she would say everything's figure outable. And every time I heard her say that, it just meant something to me. So I brought it to my son, the one that's in a wheelchair, and I'll say, everything's what? And he'll say, figure outable. That
Mhm.
is something that we often say. And I think that's the way that your mind works too. Like, if nobody else is focused on it, I will figure it out. And
Yeah.
I love that mindset. And I think we can all learn from that for sure. And solving the problem, that also reminded me of this book that I'm reading right now, The Small and Mighty. And it's a historical look back at mainly women. There's a couple of men in there, but mainly women that made impact, but you wouldn't recognize their names. They're not like these extremely infamous people, but they solved problems little by little and just made such an impact on life. And while you're talking, I'm like, you should be the next person in that book because it's very similar to just like, I'm going to make a difference one little step at a time. And I think that's inspiring and it's making me want to find out what I can do in my community.
Yeah, and you know what? Everything is figure outable. I say that a lot. I've said it so much that my friends used to joke about it, but now I've heard them start to say it. Actually, it was like a few years ago. A couple of my friends, a couple of my guy friends specifically, they'd be like, "Oh, everything's figure outable," but I've heard them say it to their own kids now, and I'm like, "See, because it
See?
is. It's everybody has a different circumstance, but you can either be a victim of your circumstance or you can figure it out. And there's
Exactly.
always a way out. It might not
Mhm.
be easy. I read this what was that book called? The Third Door, I think. The Third Door. But basically it's a book about this idea that like if you're always looking for the back door, like the back exit out of a situation, you're never going to get through it, right? Like it's not like will it work? It's going to work. I'm going to figure out a way to make it work. I'm going to figure out a way to be here for my kids because if my husband's traveling, someone's got to be here. I can't be traveling too. I'm going to figure out a way to make these things work. And I just think it's unfortunately, we very much are in a society where a lot of people want things handed to them. And they're not used to having to put in that effort to get the result they want. And because of it, I just think I don't want to say parents are doing a disservice to their kids when they hand them everything. My kids, they have to do stuff. They want to go on adventures, they are doing stuff. And I'm not paying them an allowance. They are helping out around the house because we are part of a household unit and we expect them to do their fair share. They might be little, but they can break down boxes, they can do dishes. I want to teach them how to create value, not just how to dry my wallet up. And so the more they learn that, I want them to go out in my neighborhood and say, what can I do to help my old lady neighbor? She's got leaves all over her. Go rake her yard. Don't look for her to pay you. Just go do it because it's the right thing to do. I want them to think that way. I don't want them to
Mhm.
think, sit back, wait for someone to hand me it.
Mhm.
I really don't. And I think, for me, having to kind of push through a lot of situations that I wasn't expecting to have to push through, but I didn't have another option. I had to figure it out. It does make you more resilient, and it teaches you that like you can kind of get through anything. You can figure it out if you want to, and you'll learn a lot from it.
For sure. Wow. Oh, well, like I said, I do think we could keep talking and I could ask more details about all of the things you're doing. I'm glad you mentioned the Wealth Society that you have started because I think there's a lot of women that could continue to learn from you and from some of the smart choices that you made. I love that you said this might not last forever. So I need to determine what I'm going to do with the money I'm making now. I think that's very smart. I don't think a lot of us necessarily think that way. So I think that's a great thing for you to share and continue to teach others. I just think all the little things that you're doing are making a big impact. And you are way more than just a mom, that's for sure. But I'm also glad that you're spending time with your kids and taking advantage because, like I say, it goes so fast. Take advantage of every minute if as long as they're there, as long as they're living under your roof because it goes really fast. So great
Yeah.
mindset, great thinking. I think you've given us a ton of advice and a ton of perspective, but I will give you one more opportunity if there's one final word you'd like to share with our listeners.
I think, I read a ton of books. I think I've probably already read like 40 books this year. Somewhere in a book I read, it was like, why are you not saying yes to all the things that life presents? Like when someone says, hey, can your kid have a play date? Hey, do you want to get coffee? Hey, like I know there's constraints, obviously, but like where you can say yes, I'm a no person. My kids call me the no parent because my automatic, when they ask me anything, is no. My husband's the yes parent, also known as the fun parent. But I am like, no. They're like, can we go do this? I'm like, no. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I don't even know why I just said no. Like, I just say no. But it started making me realize, why am I not saying yes to the things that we are able to go do? But I'm living right now somewhere in between like YOLO. Like I'm always like YOLO. My husband's like, you can't say that because you don't live that way. I'm like, but I'm trying to more, right? But also am very cognizant that you do have to sort of be future thinking a little bit too. And so I'm like hovering on the fence of like YOLO and responsible. Like I don't know where it falls, but I'm like, I want to do as much as possible, but also I want to be responsible. And my point of kind of last words is say yes to as much as you can. And like you said, everything is 100% figure outable. Like no matter what situation you're in, there are resources somewhere, probably for free, that you can utilize. And just give yourself more credit than you're probably giving yourself, especially for women, especially for moms. We are so hard on ourselves. You know, we are our own biggest critic because you can look at someone else and be like, they are killing it, and then look at
Mhm.
yourself and be like, ugh, you know.
Yes.
So give
Yes.
yourself, the credit you deserve because you are probably doing more in a day than most people do in a week. So just say yes to as much as you can and give yourself more credit than you probably are. Because I mean, as women specifically, if you are a mom, you have birthed a child, you have grown a child in your body, you've birthed a baby. Like you can do anything. You really can do anything. And I know it sounds so cliche because people are like, oh, you can do anything you put your mind to, but like you really can.
Mhm.
You really can. You can do things you would never even imagine. I never imagined that business that I worked with you would turn into what it turned into. I just said yes and was like, I will figure it out.
Mhm.
Do you know how to host a Zoom call? I have never hosted a Zoom call, but I will figure it out. And like those first 25 were sloppy. But after that, they got better. We figured it out.
Right. Well, yeah, I was like, I'm gonna buy a microphone and I'm gonna do a podcast
And I
and we'll
love
see what
that.
happens. So
Exactly. And you're making
yeah.
an impact. And that's the biggest thing, right? Like you don't get to take the accolades with you, but the impact stays forever. It really
Yeah.
does. And it's a trickle down effect. And we get to teach our kids that. And our kids get to teach their friends that. And that's huge. And that's where I'm at now. Like
Yeah.
100% purpose driven, making an impact.
That is such great advice. Listeners, if you could see me, you would see this like big cheesy smile on my face because I'm loving everything that Lauren is sharing. And all of you, this is your direction today. This is your challenge. Go don that cape and remind yourself how awesome you are because yeah, think about all of the little things you're doing and how they all add up and make an impact. And Lauren, you've definitely made an impact on me and so many others. I was nervous. I'm like, will she want to be a guest? And it was so great. Your response was awesome. And
Oh,
I
I'm
just
honored. It's been awesome. I
yeah.
appreciate you asking even in the first place. So
Of
thank you.
course, of course. Yes, thank you so much for being here and for all the advice. I keep telling all my guests, I'm going to have you back again because there's more things we need to discuss. There's a few things we didn't even touch on, but I appreciate all that you're doing. Keep making an impact. I'm going to keep following you and watching all the joy that your kids have on their faces when they do all the adventures they're doing with you and your husband and keep up the great work. I can't wait to hear what you do for your small city too.
I know, working on it
Yeah.
little by little.
So that's great. Well, thank you so much for being on and I can't wait for my listeners to hear this episode.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you for joining me for the Show Me the Way podcast. I truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. I hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If this episode touched your heart, don't forget to leave a quick review as it will help us reach and motivate more people. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.